I've been dealing with kidney problems for most of my adult life. After my transplant failed a few years back, got really sick with something that matched what we now know as COVID symptoms, but this was months before it was officially a thing. Everything just went downhill. Lost my parathyroid glands due to complications, and now I need meds just to absorb calcium properly. My bones are so weak that some days just moving around feels like torture. But yesterday was different. It wasn't just about the physical pain. It was about something that got much deeper. My sister and I were visiting our family plot at the local cemetery. Our mom passed away last year, and my brother-in-law's been gone for 3 years now. We try to visit at least once a month, bring fresh flowers, that sort of thing. Usually we can drive right up to the graves on the tarmac path, which is a blessing for me since walking's become such a challenge. This time though, the path didn't quite reach where we needed to go. My leg was acting up something fierce, so I told my sister to go ahead and lay the wreath while I waited in the car. It should have been a simple thing, right? Just a quiet moment to remember our loved ones. She came back in tears. Through her sobs, my sister told me about a guy sitting on Mom's headstone just playing music on his phone. She explained how she'd tried to ask him to move, but he just brushed her off. I could see how upset she was, and something in me just snapped. I told her to stay put while I dealt with this myself. Even with my bad leg, I managed to limp over there. Sure enough, this young guy, couldn't have been more than 30, was not only sitting on my mother's headstone but was trying to pull apart the wreath my sister had just laid down. I shouted at him to get away from my family's grave. The guy barely looked up, just kept fiddling with the wreath. Then he made a snide comment, assuming I was my sister's husband, who'd been sent by his witch wife to scare him off. I had to correct his stupid assumption by telling him I was her brother. He just smirked and kept pulling at the wreath. I snatched it back from him, which wasn't easy given my condition, but anger gives you strength sometimes. That's when my sister came back with one of the council workers who maintains the cemetery. The worker told the guy he needed to leave immediately or they'd call the police. The guy dismissed him, saying we didn't own the place. My sister immediately announced she was calling the police. The guy started arguing, getting in our faces. I broke down crying, partly from anger, partly from the physical strain of standing there. My sister was crying too, but she got that look she gets when she's pushed too far. She had her phone out, already talking to the police. The guy finally took off when he realized we were serious about the cops, but the damage was done. We later found out from the police that this wasn't his first time. He'd been stealing flowers and decorations from graves to resell them. Who does that? Well, karma caught up with him faster than expected. The police nabbed him just 2 days later at a different cemetery. Turns out he had over 20 theft charges pending, plus property damage for breaking someone's headstone. But while investigating his flower-selling operation, they discovered he was also running a small-time drug-dealing business, using the cemetery as his meeting spot. Now, instead of just facing fines and a suspended sentence, he's looking at serious jail time. My sister told me she drove by the cemetery yesterday and saw them installing security cameras. Apparently, our case was the final push the council needed to upgrade their security. It won't bring back the peace of mind we lost, but at least it might prevent someone else from going through what we did. I still visit Mom's grave, but now my sister and I always go together. Some days my leg hurts too much to make it all the way there, but she'll wait with me in the car as long as it takes until I can manage it. We're not letting one entitled jerk take this away from us. I'm a combat veteran with post-traumatic stress disorder, and I have a German Shepherd service dog who helps me cope with daily life. Let's call him Doug. Yeah, like from that Disney movie, Up, because who doesn't love that film? Doug went through intensive training with the state police and a 6-month specialized program that turned him into the most disciplined working dog you could imagine. One day I was at the liquor store picking up some bourbon for a gathering at my mom's place. Doug was with me wearing his service vest and attached to my belt with a 4-foot leash. We were just browsing the aisles when this woman started cooing over Doug, repeatedly trying to pet him. I politely asked her not to pet him because he was working. She ignored me and kept trying, so I had to tell her again that he was a service animal. After a few more attempts to be polite, I finally lost my patience and told her that he was a service animal on duty, wouldn't pay attention to her, didn't want to be touched, and asked her to leave us alone. She huffed off to the register, clearly offended. Doug gave me a few warning yips, sensing my anxiety rising. I took a moment to collect myself since I really don't handle confrontation well these days. Little did I know this was just the beginning of our interaction with this Karen, who turned out to be my mom's new neighbor. Later that day, I drove to my mom's new place in my RX-7. Yeah, it's pretty loud. Doug knew the place well since we'd visited a few times before, so he jumped out through the driver's window as soon as I parked and ran to greet my mom on the back porch. The driveway was shared between the two houses, but Doug stayed clear of Karen's property. When I was walking toward my mom, who was starting to throw a tennis ball for Doug, I suddenly felt sharp nails dig into my bicep. My combat instincts kicked in, and before I knew it, Karen was on the ground with a bloody nose, black eye, and road rash on her elbow. I tried to apologize and explain it was a reflex, but she just let out an inhuman screech while attempting to kick me. Doug immediately positioned himself between my legs, showing his teeth and protecting me. Karen scrambled to her feet, spat on me, and started hurling random slurs. She threatened to call the police, claiming my attack dog had come at her and that I had punched her in the face. I whistled for Doug to go inside, took my anxiety meds, and sat down on the porch to smoke a cigarette. My mom noticed I was bleeding through my shirt from Karen's claws. Great, definitely needed stitches. 6 police cars arrived with lights flashing. Karen immediately started screaming, demanding they arrest that criminal and his attack dog. I couldn't help but laugh considering Doug's only victim had been a pizza I'd left unattended months ago. When the police asked to see Doug, I whistled. He came through the screen door and sat at my feet. I showed them his service animal ID and explained my situation. While we talked, one female officer had already gotten down on the ground giving Doug belly rubs. Then my mom told the officers that our Ring cameras had caught everything and offered to show them the video. Karen turned ghost white. After reviewing the footage, the officers asked if I wanted to press charges. I declined, not wanting to create drama between my mom and her new neighbor. The female officer stayed for lunch, spending her break playing with Doug. The funny thing is, Karen actually apologized later. She admitted she understood why I reacted the way I did when she grabbed me. Now she and Doug are surprisingly friendly with each other, though he still won't let her pet him while he's working. Karen moved out 3 months later after finding out the entire neighborhood had seen the Ring camera footage. Turns out my mom had shared it in the neighborhood Facebook group when Karen tried spreading rumors about me. I used to be a physical education teacher at a high school. I absolutely loved my job. About 2 years ago, I had a bad fall during one of the track events I was supervising. Damaged my knee pretty badly, torn ligaments, the works. Had to go through multiple surgeries, but it never quite healed right. Now I walk with a cane, and while I've learned to manage, it means I had to give up the job I loved. These days I work as an online fitness consultant, helping people with mobility issues stay active. The irony isn't lost on me. I've got a handicap placard for my car, and I've developed some routines to make my life easier. One of them is doing my shopping super early, usually around 7 a.m., when the stores are nearly empty. It's just easier to maneuver with a cane when you're not dodging crowds. So there I was, pulling into the handicap spot at this big department store. You know, one of those famous ones where everyone does their holiday shopping. It was a chilly morning and I was thinking about the Christmas presents I needed to buy for my nieces. I had just gotten out of my car when I heard her. She started yelling at me to move, claiming I was in her spot. I turned around to see this woman in an expensive-looking SUV glaring at me like I'd just committed a capital offense. Her perfectly highlighted hair was styled in that typical, "I want to speak to your manager" cut, and she had enough jewelry on to open her own store. I decided not to engage. It was too early for this nonsense, and I hadn't even had my second cup of coffee. I grabbed my cane and started making my way toward the store entrance. That's when she started screaming again, this time telling me to get out of her spot. She had the nerve to call me fat and claim I wasn't really disabled, then threatened to call the police. Now I've dealt with my share of comments about my weight since my injury. When you go from being an active physical education teacher to being largely sedentary, your body changes. But something about her entitled attitude and the way she was screeching just made something snap inside me. I yelled back at her, telling her to go ahead and call the police. I explained that they could run both the placard and car tags, which were both in my name. Then I sarcastically invited her to get lost, since it was the holiday season and all. She was still screaming as I walked away, ranting about how people like me abuse the system and how she deserved the spot more because she had a real disability. I didn't bother looking back, but I could hear her car door slam and her heels clicking on the pavement. The store's door attendant, this young guy, who couldn't have been more than 20, looked concerned as I approached. He asked if I needed any help dealing with the harassment. I told him no and made a joke about how a can of Raid or a muzzle would do the trick. But the story doesn't end there. When I was picking out gifts in the electronics section, I heard a commotion at the front of the store. Curious, I made my way back and found Karen having a meltdown at the customer service desk, with 2 police officers standing nearby. Apparently, she had called the police as threatened, but she'd also gone inside to complain about me to the store manager. What she didn't know was that the store had recently installed new security cameras in the parking lot, and the door attendant had already reported the incident. One of the officers explained to her that they had verified my handicap placard was valid. He warned her that her behavior could be considered harassment and mentioned that the store had provided them with video evidence of her actions. She started shouting again, insisting that I was obviously faking it and that she needed the spot for her shopping. The officer asked her if she had a handicap placard herself. She stammered out that she didn't, trying to make excuses. The officer then told her that she wasn't authorized to park in handicapped spaces and warned her that threatening other customers could result in legal repercussions. The store manager then stepped in and told her that she was no longer welcome at the store due to her harassment of customers. When she was being escorted out, I couldn't resist calling out to her with mock cheerfulness, suggesting that maybe Santa would bring her some manners this year. The store manager apologized to me and gave me a discount on my purchases. The door attendant told me later that Karen had tried to pull this stunt before with other customers, but this was the first time she'd actually called the police on herself. Anyways, I got my Christmas shopping done and Karen got a lesson in humility, though I doubt it stuck. I've been working at this company for over 15 years. When I first started, it was actually a great place to work. Decent overtime pay, good atmosphere, and managers who treated us like human beings. But as technology started replacing more and more of what we did, things changed. Our building went from over 1,000 employees down to about 250, and the competition to keep your job got fierce. That's when they brought in this manager. Let's call him the executioner. He was different from the other managers. While most of them got promoted without really knowing what they were doing, the executioner actually studied company policies and procedures. He made it his mission to fire as many people as possible, saving the company money on voluntary departure packages. The way it worked was pretty simple but cruel. Even though everyone met the basic work requirements, they kept a bottom 10 list. If you were on it, you were at risk of being fired. Didn't matter if you were actually doing your job well enough. And since there would always be a bottom 10%, there was always someone to target. I had a decent performance record, usually in the top 10%, but I had health issues that affected my attendance. I also wasn't exactly subtle about how much I hated what the place had become. That's how I ended up on the executioner's team. It was where they put all the problem employees they wanted to get rid of. The executioner tried to fire me 7 times in 1 year. 7 times! Each time I had to go to human resources to fight it. During these meetings, I would point out how this was clearly discrimination based on my health condition, even offering my hospital records as proof. The human resources representative would agree and say they couldn't approve the termination since my medical absences were protected. The executioner would then try to claim it wasn't about the absences but about overall reliability and commitment to the role. I'd counter by reminding him how just the previous month he had praised my work quality and called me one of the most efficient team members. This dance kept repeating. Eventually, I went to human resources with a bigger complaint. I explained that this wasn't just about me anymore. The executioner was creating a hostile work environment by specifically targeting people with health issues or personal problems. The human resources representative sympathetically told me they understood my concern but couldn't do anything because upper management supported him since he was saving them money on severance packages. When I asked if this was even legal, they explained that unless I could prove direct hostility or abuse, my only option would be taking it to court. Then they mentioned, almost casually, that there were some new positions opening up. They were looking for roaming managers, people willing to travel anywhere in the country on short notice. Not many people wanted these jobs. That's when the idea hit me. The executioner was always bragging about his perfect family life, his wife, his kids, his house. He'd never want a job that would take him away from that. I gathered a few other employees who'd been targeted by him, and we put our plan in motion. We sent glowing recommendations about the executioner directly to upper management, way above our local managers' heads. I told my co-workers to emphasize his deep knowledge of company procedures and how efficiently he handles difficult situations. One co-worker suggested mentioning how he was always talking about wanting more responsibility, which I thought was perfect. I also reminded them to highlight his attention to detail and dedication to company policies. For months, nothing happened. Then one morning, the executioner came in absolutely livid. He was shouting about how ridiculous it was that they couldn't force him to take this position. His boss explained that it wasn't forcing, it was a promotion, and upper management had specifically requested him based on his excellent recommendations. The executioner protested that he had a family and couldn't be traveling all over the country. His boss simply said his options: take the standard demotion package and return to a regular employee position with a significant pay cut, or accept the promotion. Instead, the executioner quit. He took voluntary departure, the very thing he'd been preventing others from getting for years. On his last day, he completely lost it. He started yelling about how ungrateful we all were, how he had done everything they asked and followed every procedure, claiming he was the only one willing to make the hard decisions. One of my co-workers told him maybe he should have thought about that before making everyone else's lives miserable. The executioner shouted back that we had no idea what it takes to run a business and that the place would fall apart without him. I just told him I thought we'd manage somehow. He stormed out, leaving behind years of misery and a much happier workplace. They never replaced him with another executioner. It turns out, when you treat people with basic dignity, you don't need someone specifically hired to find ways to fire them. And me? I'm still there, still dealing with my health issues, but now without someone breathing down my neck about every doctor's appointment.